Black cleaning lady was cleaning the floor, then she spoke Japanese to the Millionaire CEO and surprised everyone. "I'm sorry, but we can't understand you. Could you try in English?" The voice of the receptionist at the luxurious Imperial Hotel was tense, her eyes darting nervously to the small crowd that was beginning to form around the marble counter. The Japanese woman in a navy blue suit stood motionless, her hands politely clasped in front of her, but her sharp, inscrutable eyes scanned the growing tension like a general studying a battlefield. Behind her, an assistant in a dark suit typed frantically on his cell phone. Two translators whispered in the background, red with embarrassment and completely lost. "Should we call security?" whispered an employee behind the counter. "She's not being aggressive," whispered another, "but she refuses to answer in English, French, or Mandarin. And she booked the presidential suite, for God's sake." Across the lobby, near the golden luggage carts, Lucia Santos watched silently as she wiped the edge of a glass table. His gray cleaning uniform blended into the environment like wallpaper by design. People don't see cleaners. That was part of the job, especially in a place like the Imperial Hotel, where luxury was measured not only in marble but in who was allowed to be heard. Lucia was only 32, but her eyes carried the wisdom of someone who had weathered storms few could imagine. The general manager, Patricia Mendez, descended the main staircase as if she were stepping onto a Broadway stage. Her heels clicked dryly on the polished floor, her red lipstick a beacon of manufactured control. "Good morning," she said with theatrical calm, placing both hands on the reception desk. "I'm the general manager here. How can we help you, ma'am?" The Japanese woman did not respond. "Ma'am," Patricia repeated, firmer this time. Still nothing. Patricia turned, giving her staff a forced smile. "She's refusing to speak. This is unacceptable." The murmurs grew. From where she stood, Lucia felt the change in the air. Something deeper than confusion. Contempt disguised as customer service. Fear masked by professionalism. Patricia leaned toward the guest and said slowly, as if speaking to a disobedient child, "This is America, ma'am. If you want to be served here, you need to speak English." A pause. Then, softly but unmistakably, the woman exhaled. A single silent sigh. It wasn't dramatic. It was deliberate, measured, and Lucia felt a chill run down her spine. The assistant stepped forward nervously. "She's not being difficult. She just prefers to communicate in her native language for formal matters." "Formal?" Patricia laughed, shaking her head. "We're not in Tokyo. If she wants towels or champagne, she can point like everyone else, but she's holding up the check-in line." Lucia dropped the cleaning cloth on the cart and moved slowly toward the commotion. She didn't know why her feet were moving. They just were. Something in the woman's eyes. She couldn't name it, but she recognized it. It was the look of someone being measured on a coin they never agreed to wear. Patricia waved to a nearby uniformed security guard. "Transfer this to security." The woman's assistant stepped between them, alarmed. "Please, she's not causing any harm. She's one of Japan's most respected executives." "She's delaying service at a 5-star hotel," Patricia retorted. "We don't have time for guessing games and silent treatment." The woman's hand trembled slightly, then returned to stillness. Her silence was not weakness. It was a blade. It was then that Lucia stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said. Everyone turned. Patricia blinked. "Ms. Santos, this isn't about cleaning." "I know," she said simply. She turned to the guest, offered a slight bow, almost imperceptible but perfect, and said in fluent soft Japanese, "Ohayo gozaimasu, Nakamura-sama. Would you like a cup of tea?" Time stood still. Even the soft piano music playing through the ceiling speakers seemed to disappear. The woman's eyes widened, not dramatically, not in surprise, but with a slow awakening of the recognition of being truly seen. She said something in Japanese, quiet and melodic. Lucia nodded. She gestured toward the lounge. "We can sit there. No pressure, no misunderstanding." The assistant turned to the team, stammering, She's talking to her perfectly." With a Kyoto accent. Patricia's voice cracked just a little. How do you even know Japanese?" "I don't think that matters now," Lucia said gently. And there, before all the scornful glances, she stood firm, like someone guarding a secret too powerful to be revealed before the right time. While everyone mocked her position, Her eyes revealed a serenity that only exists in those who have faced much worse storms and survived to tell the story. If this story of prejudice and overcoming adversity touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple moment of humiliation would become the catalyst for a revolution that no one would ever forget. The fine porcelain cup trembled slightly in Lucia's hand as she placed it on the low table between them. It wasn't just tea. It was ritual, the kind of silent ceremony she hadn't performed in nearly a decade. Akiko Nakamura sat across from her in the private lounge, her posture regal, her hands delicately folded in her lap. Her coat, still damp from the morning drizzle, hung carefully on the arm of the chair beside her. But it wasn't her elegance that caught Lucia's attention. It was her restraint. There was power in the way she held stillness like a violin string tuned just right to sing, but not to snap. "Arigato gozaimasu," Akiko said softly, her eyes downcast, in Japanese. "For speaking with intention." Lucia nodded once. "It's been a while. My accent is probably rusty." "No," Akiko replied, still in Japanese. "It's not rust. It's memory." A silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, but suspended like breath before music. Akiko studied her carefully, her voice now in careful English, tinged with a Kyoto accent. "You learned Japanese formally." "Kyoto University," Lucia said. 7 years as a cultural linguistics professor, specializing in East Asian dynamics of silence. Akiko raised an eyebrow, just slightly. "I wrote my thesis on the phrase kuki wa yomu," she added with a smile. "The art of reading the air." This earned her a whisper of a smile, there and then gone like a ripple on still water. "And now, cleaning lady," Akiko said, not mockingly, but with genuine curiosity. "Now, a cleaning lady," Lucia confirmed. "At least until someone finds out I know more than where the mops are kept." Across the hotel, Patricia Mendez tapped her heel against the marble floor like a nervous machine gun. She had locked herself in the executive office with 2 assistants and the public relations director. She completely disregarded the chain of command, Patricia hissed, pacing behind the desk. "A cleaning lady has no authority to make decisions about customer service." "But she resolved the situation," the assistant murmured cautiously. "She set a precedent," Patricia retorted. "If we allow lower-level employees to ignore protocols to put on a cultural show, we completely lose control of the brand." The PR director cleared his throat nervously. Technically, she demonstrated excellent customer service. The guest clearly felt. "The guest felt she was being served by a cleaner," Patricia cut in. "It makes us look incompetent. As if our trained staff weren't capable of handling a basic situation." She stopped abruptly and turned to her assistants. "I want Santos's complete background. Where she worked before, her education, everything. And I want her in my office in 10 minutes." Back in the lounge, Lucia poured green tea for herself, her movements precise. Akiko watched her with more than interest. It was recognition. "Why hide?" Akiko asked softly in Japanese. Lucia looked down. Her voice grew quieter. "After my wife died, I needed a job where no one would ask me about my past or my future." Akiko's gaze softened, but she said nothing. Lucia continued, "Silence isn't always retreat. Sometimes it's the only honest thing left." For a moment, Akiko looked out the window, her fingers brushing the rim of her teacup. "In my country," she said, "we are taught that the most powerful person in the room is often the one who speaks last." Lucia laughed softly. "In this country, whoever speaks loudest usually wins." Akiko turned back to her. "Serious now. And that's why I stopped speaking English in negotiations. Words became noise, weapons. Negotiation should be about intention, but here it's about performance." Lucia watched her with more than interest. It was recognition. She saw Akiko not as a billionaire, but as a human being trying to protect something fragile beneath the surface. She knew the feeling. "You're not here to sign a contract," Lucia said finally. "You're here to see who's willing to listen before you speak." Akiko's eyes met hers, and she knew she was right. At that moment, Patricia's loud voice echoed down the hall. "Santos. My office. Now." Lucia sighed and started to get up, but Akiko placed a delicate hand on her arm. "Excuse me," Akiko said, her voice still soft but with an authority that made Lucia pause. Ms. Santos is currently assisting me. If Ms. Mendez wishes to speak with her, she can schedule that after our meeting is complete. Patricia appeared in the lounge doorway, her face red with contained anger. Ma'am, with all due respect, Santos is a hotel employee and I, Akiko interrupted calmly, am Akiko Nakamura, CEO of Nakamura Technologies. My company is considering a $50 million investment in hotel expansion on the East Coast. She paused deliberately. The quality of customer service will, of course, be a crucial factor in that decision. Patricia paled. Lucia remained seated, but something changed in her eyes. It wasn't submission. It was the look of someone who had just realized she wasn't fighting alone. Of course, Patricia murmured, forcing a smile. I'll be careful not to interrupt again. When Patricia left, Akiko turned to Lucia with a look that was a mixture of amusement and something deeper. 50 million? Lucia asked in Japanese. 80, actually, Akiko replied with a small smile. But I thought it would be polite to underestimate. They laughed together, and for the first time that day, the silence didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like peace. But as Patricia walked away down the hallway, her footsteps echoing like a sinister promise, Lucia knew that this was far from over. What Patricia didn't realize was that, in trying to humiliate her in front of Akiko, she had just awakened something that had been dormant for years, the fighting spirit of a woman who had already lost everything once and lived to tell the story. Each new humiliation only strengthened something inside Lucia that her oppressors couldn't see, a silent force fueled by the very injustice they sought to impose. What people like Patricia didn't know was that every act of contempt was writing her own sentence of defeat. And when Lucia lowered her head slightly under the censorious glances, everyone thought they had broken her spirit, but those who know true strength know that it grows precisely in silence, in the place where the most devastating storms are conceived. Patricia Mendez's office seemed designed to intimidate. Polished marble floors, walls covered with diplomas and certifications, an imposing desk that made her look like a judge about to deliver a sentence. Lucia entered with the upright posture of someone who had faced much more threatening courts. Sit down, Patricia ordered, without looking up from her papers. We have a lot to talk about regarding your performance today. Lucia remained standing. I prefer to stand, thank you. Patricia finally looked up, clearly irritated by the refusal to submit. Very well. Let's get straight to the point. Your behavior today was completely inappropriate. You violated protocols, disrespected the hierarchy, and embarrassed the management team. I helped a guest who was being mistreated, Lucia replied calmly. You interfered in a situation that was not your concern. Patricia slammed her hand on the table. A cleaning lady has no authority to make decisions about high-level customer service. Lucia smiled slightly. And who would have the appropriate authority? The person who called security on a guest who booked the presidential suite. Patricia's face turned red. Don't be insolent. I know your type. You think you can do anything and then cry prejudice when you're called out on it. Interesting perspective, Lucia murmured, but her eyes flashed with something Patricia couldn't quite identify. Let me be clear, Patricia continued, leaning across the desk. You will apologize publicly to the staff, you will return to your cleaning duties, and you will never approach guests without express permission. And if I hear even a whisper about you speaking foreign languages with guests, you'll be out on the street the same day. Lucia nodded slowly. I understand perfectly. Patricia smiled, thinking she had established her dominance. Good. Now get back to work. But when Lucia reached the door, she turned around. Can I ask you a question, ma'am? What? Have you ever been to Japan? Patricia frowned. What does that have to do with anything? Just curious, Lucia said with an enigmatic smile. I'm sure you would really appreciate Japanese culture, especially the concept of nemawashi. Nima what? It's nothing important, Lucia replied, stepping out and closing the door softly behind her. 3 hours later, in Lucia's modest apartment, two women sat at the small kitchen table. Akiko had changed out of her formal suit and into casual clothes, but her presence still commanded respect. Did she threaten you directly? Akiko asked, pouring green tea from a thermos she had brought with her. Patricia isn't subtle, Lucia replied. But she's not smart either. She just gave me exactly what I needed. Akiko raised an eyebrow. What would that be? Lucia stood up and walked over to a small filing cabinet in the corner of the room. From inside, she pulled out a meticulously organized folder. 7 months of documentation. She opened the folder on the table. Incident reports, copies of emails, photographs taken discreetly with a cell phone. Everything catalogued with academic precision. March incident, Lucia said, pointing to a photo. An Arab client was accidentally placed on the top floor, in the room next to the noisy engine room, even though he had booked a quiet suite. Akiko studied the document. And this? An internal email from Patricia instructing that clients with difficult-to-pronounce names be directed to lower category rooms, even if they pay for upgrades. Akiko leafed through more pages, her expression growing increasingly serious. My God, Lucia. This is systematic. 7 months of collecting evidence, Lucia confirmed. Patricia regularly engages in racial discrimination, but always in a subtle enough way to have plausible deniability. Until today. What changed today? Lucia smiled. Today she threatened me in front of witnesses for helping a Japanese guest. And I recorded it. She took out her cell phone and played the audio of the conversation in the office. Patricia's voice echoed clearly, I know your type. You think you can do anything and then cry prejudice when you're called out on it. Akiko leaned back in her chair. That's unacceptable. But it's still not enough, Lucia said. I need something bigger. Something she can't deny or minimize. Akiko studied her carefully. You have a plan. I have 2 options, Lucia said, closing the folder. The first is to sue the hotel for racial discrimination and harassment. I have enough evidence for a guaranteed victory. And the second? Lucia's eyes flashed with an intensity that made Akiko lean forward. The second is to give Patricia exactly what she deserves. A lesson in humility she'll never forget. Explain. Lucia stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. You said you're considering an $80 million investment in hotel expansion, right? Yes. And how many hotels are on your short list? 3. The Imperial is one of them. Lucia turned, a smile growing on her lips. Patricia doesn't know you have that kind of decision-making power, does she? To her, you're just another wealthy Japanese guest. Akiko began to understand. Go on. What would happen if, during an official inspection of your company, Patricia publicly demonstrated the same discriminatory behavior she's been practicing for months? It would be the end of her career, Akiko said slowly. Exactly. But it would have to be something so blatant, so undeniable, that even corporate lawyers couldn't minimize it. Akiko was silent for a long moment, then asked, What do you need from me? Just be yourself, Lucia replied. A Japanese CEO evaluating $1 million investment. And trust me when I tell you it's time to act. And you're sure this will work? Lucia picked up her cell phone again and showed her a video she had recorded discreetly. On the screen, Patricia could be seen clearly instructing an employee. If these types of customers complain about the service, you pretend you don't understand and send them to the competition. It's better to lose a problematic customer than to deal with their fussiness. I'm absolutely sure, Lucia said, turning off the device. That night, while Akiko returned to her hotel, Lucia stayed up organizing her files. Every document, every photo, every recording was meticulously reviewed. She had learned in college that the most powerful research wasn't just about collecting data, it was about knowing exactly how and when to use it. The difference between Patricia and her was not just education or social class. It was that Patricia systematically underestimated anyone she considered inferior, while Lucia had learned to observe, analyze, and act with surgical precision. As she organized the documents in chronological order, Lucia smiled at the thought of Patricia's expression when she discovered that the simple cleaning lady she had tried to humiliate had meticulously orchestrated her own downfall. Under the weight of all the condescending looks she had endured over the past few months, her hands trembled slightly as she held the papers that would change everything. But anyone watching closely would notice that it wasn't fear that made those hands tremble, it was the contained power of someone about to rewrite her own story and teach a lesson that would echo through the corporate corridors for years to come. The next morning, the lobby of the Imperial Hotel buzzed with a different energy. Executives in impeccable suits, tablets in hand and serious expressions on their faces, scurried through every corner of the hotel. The official inspection of Nakamura Technologies had begun, and Patricia Mendez couldn't contain her excitement. $80 million, she muttered to herself, adjusting her blazer for the fifth time. $80 million in direct investment. Akiko walked through the lobby with a team of 3 evaluators, all Japanese, examining every detail of the operation. Patricia followed her like an anxious shadow, smiling excessively and gesturing exaggeratedly. As you can see, our clientele is extremely international, Patricia said aloud. We serve people from all cultures with the same standard of excellence. Lucia watched everything from across the lobby, pretending to clean a decorative vase. She had coordinated everything carefully with Akiko. The CEO had requested that the inspection include a real-time assessment of customer service, specifically with guests who did not speak English fluently. Perfect, Akiko had said the night before. I want to see how your team reacts when they think there are no consequences. The first test came in disguise. One of Akiko's evaluators, Hiroshi, approached the front desk pretending to be a confused guest. He began asking questions in Japanese, clearly distressed, gesturing toward the elevators. I'm sorry, sir, the receptionist said nervously. We don't understand you. Patricia quickly approached, her forced smile already showing signs of tension. Is there a problem here? Hiroshi continued speaking in Japanese, now more agitated, pointing to a piece of paper with room numbers. Look, Patricia said, her voice already losing its manufactured cordiality. If you can't communicate in English, perhaps you should consider a hotel that offers more specialized assistance. Across the lobby, Akiko gave an almost imperceptible signal. The hidden cameras her aides had strategically placed were recording everything. But Patricia didn't stop there. Seeing that the guest continued to insist in Japanese, her mask of professionalism finally slipped. My God, she said, turning to the receptionist with an exasperated expression. Why do these types of people always choose American hotels if they can't even ask for a glass of water properly? The entire lobby froze. Even the regular guests stopped to watch the scene. Hiroshi continued his performance, now clearly recording the discrimination on his own cell phone. I can't waste my time with this, Patricia continued, her voice rising. We have real Japanese investors to impress today. We can't be wasting time with anyone who shows up here speaking languages no one understands. It was at that moment that Lucia approached calmly, carrying her cleaning supplies. Excuse me, she said softly. Can I help? Patricia turned, her face red with irritation. Santos, I told you not to meddle in. But Lucia ignored her completely. She addressed Hiroshi directly and said in fluent Japanese, Ohayo gozaimasu. Sumimasen, doko no heya wa saga's height imasuka. Good morning. Excuse me, which room are you looking for? Hiroshi replied in Japanese, explaining his problem with the elevator. Lucia nodded and calmly guided him to the correct one, chatting fluently all the way. Patricia stood there, speechless, watching the scene. When Lucia returned, she exploded. I told you not to do that. Patricia screamed, completely losing control. You're a cleaner. A simple black cleaner who should be cleaning bathrooms, not playing translator. The silence that followed was deafening. Every person in the lobby, guests, employees, evaluators, froze completely. Patricia's words echoed through the marble hallways like a public confession of everything she really thought. It was then that Akiko emerged from the shadows, walking slowly toward Patricia with an expression that mixed disappointment and contained fury. Ms. Mendez, Akiko said in perfect English, her voice as cold as ice. I am Akiko Nakamura, CEO of Nakamura Technologies. Patricia's face went every shade of white imaginable. MMS. Nakamura. I didn't know you were. Do you speak English? Akiko finished. Yes, I do. Just as I speak Japanese, Mandarin, Korean, and French. But I choose to use my native language when I want to assess the true character of the people with whom I intend to do business. Patricia tried to stammer out an explanation, but Akiko raised her hand, silencing her. Over the past 48 hours, Akiko continued, my team has systematically documented 7 instances of racial discrimination, 12 cases of linguistic prejudice, and 3 direct civil rights violations committed by your administration. She gestured, and her aides approached with tablets and cameras. We have audio recordings of you instructing employees to redirect problematic customers with hard-to-pronounce names. We have videos of you directing that guests of certain ethnicities be placed in lower-tier rooms. And now, Akiko paused dramatically, we have your public confession of racial bias, recorded by 16 different people and already being broadcast live on our corporate social media channels. Patricia staggered, seeking support from the wall. That was a misunderstanding. No, Lucia said calmly, stepping forward and handing Patricia a thick folder. This was 7 months of systematic documentation of your discriminatory practices. Patricia opened the folder with trembling hands. Page after page of evidence, photographs, email transcripts, incident reports, all meticulously organized and dated. You're fired, effective immediately, said a voice behind her. The hotel's regional director had arrived, clearly informed of the situation. And our company will be facing a federal discrimination lawsuit that you created. But I can explain, Patricia tried, her voice now a desperate whisper. No need, Akiko said. Her actions have already explained everything. As security guards escorted Patricia out of the hotel, the same security she had threatened to call on a Japanese guest 2 days earlier, Lucia remained in the center of the lobby, surrounded by looks of admiration and respect. The regional director approached her, extending his hand. Dr. Santos, we'd like to talk to you about a management position in diversity and inclusion, with a salary that properly reflects your qualifications. Lucia smiled softly. Thank you, but I already have a better offer. Akiko approached, gently placing her hand on Lucia's shoulder. Nakamura Technologies is creating a new international corporate ethics department. We would like you to lead it. As the hotel doors closed behind Patricia for the last time, Lucia looked around the lobby where she had been humiliated so many times. Now, every employee, every guest, every person present knew exactly who she really was. The woman who had been called a mere black cleaning lady had methodically orchestrated the downfall of the person who had discriminated against her, using intelligence, patience, and a justice as precise as surgery. Patricia had lost not only her job, but her entire reputation, while Lucia emerged as the heroine who had exposed an entire system of institutional prejudice. But while everyone celebrated justice being served, something even bigger was about to be revealed, a connection between Lucia and Akiko that would transform not only their personal lives, but create a corporate revolution that would forever change the way companies around the world treated diversity and inclusion. 6 months later, Lucia was sitting in her new office at Nakamura Technologies headquarters, with a panoramic view of the city. As Global Director of Corporate Ethics, she had implemented diversity programs in 43 companies, completely transforming the organizational culture of each one. Patricia Mendez never got another job in the hotel industry. The video of his racist comments went viral with over 2 million views, becoming a case study in universities about how prejudice destroys careers. She now works as a salesperson in a department store, earning less in a month than Lucia earns in a day. The Imperial Hotel was acquired by Nakamura Technologies and became a global benchmark for inclusive hospitality. A plaque in the main lobby honors all hard-working people who fight daily against prejudice and discrimination. Akiko and Lucia have developed not only an extraordinary professional partnership, but a friendship that transcends cultures and languages. Together, they have proven that true revolution begins when courageous people refuse to accept injustice as normal. The best revenge was not to destroy Patricia. It was to build something greater than she could ever imagine. Lucia learned that when you respond to prejudice with intelligence and dignity, you not only defeat your enemies, you inspire others to fight as well. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity regardless of their position, subscribe to the channel. Share in the comments if you have faced prejudice and how you reacted. Together we can create a world where a person's character matters more than any label they try to put on them.